Yes, hello, and welcome to Survivor Debrief. I'm Eden Porter, the lucky loser from Survivor Titans versus Rebels, and with me, as always, is my comedic partner and real-life brother, Joshua Porter. Welcome, Josh. But before we do all the full welcomes, yes, this is a special bonus episode, and as a result, we've got a special guest with us today. Yes, you've all seen her lovely face from Australian Survivor, Blood versus Water, and Heroes versus Villains. And now we can add the anonymous to that long list of achievements. It's our very own honorary Australian, Nina Twine. Nina, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And I love the fact that you said honorary Aussie. I think a lot of people forget it. And I'm like, guys, no, it's already a done deal.
Yeah,
you can't take it back.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you for jumping on. We thought we'd just do a little bit of a bonus episode, bit of a recap on season 47, a look at it as a whole, what we liked and what we didn't like, and just have a little bit of a chat. So thank you so much for joining us. Now, how are you, by the way? Just in general, you okay?
Yeah, absolutely not too bad. We've got the holiday season coming up, so super excited about that, to be with family and just spread some cheer.
Some holiday cheer. That's right. We're all about that. So 47 in general. Your thoughts, Nina? How did you find the season? How did you find the winner, Rachel? What were your thoughts?
Super happy with Rachel as a winner. I thought it was a really good season. There were a lot of times where I'm thinking, how is this person going to get out of this situation? The fact that there was a lot of just like turnaround within hours. We see it constantly on Survivor, especially with Titan versus Rebels. But to really see it on the US side of things with a much shorter time frame where they really only have that day to really work what they want to do. I found it really fascinating with all the advantages, the way it was used. I mean, the shot in the dark, using that as kind of like a tester if you need to play an idol or not, like that had me shook. I was super happy with it. It was a great season.
Do you think, speaking of shot in the dark, actually, do you think, when they, during the season, obviously they decided to all give up their shot in the dark for Rice, and so they didn't have their shot in the dark for the rest of the game. Do you think that impacted the mentality of the players at all, or how they approached it without that shot in the dark as that safety net?
Yes, probably, but overall, I want to say no, because shot in the dark is still a new era thing, and a lot of these people are super fans or longtime fans where there was never a shot in the dark. So the fact that it was they chose to give it away, but they no longer had that option, I don't think affected them as much as we probably thought it would have, being that they know what it's like, or at least have watched what it's like to play without it.
I think it's probably also quite good, like, just in terms of mental load. Like, it's a nice thing to not have to worry about. Like, if all the permutations, all the crazy things going on, at least you're like, oh, I don't have to worry about that anymore. That's good.
Yeah. I think it was good. It was a sort of a throwback. This season felt sort of more old schooly in a way because of a few of those things. And I think there was also people making some emotional decisions, which we haven't seen as much on in the new era. Everyone seems to be everyone's big fans of the cast now. Everyone's very logical. What's the most ideal move in this situation? But you had a few people in there that were doing things very emotionally, like Teeny's references to how she was approaching the game. Rome was obviously very emotional throughout the season, which was fun. So it was great to have some of these different characters. Just speaking of some of the players, who sort of stood out to you, Neen? Who was some of your favorite characters from the season?
Yeah, of course, love Rachel, have to. I really, Rome was one of those like love to hate, hate to love kind of people. I still respect his game because the way he went about it, and after he explained why he did certain things, I was like, okay, I get it. In the moment, all I can think is being on the other side. I know what it's like, or at least have an idea of what it's like to be with a player who's a little bit more chaotic. So I'm just like, I would hate to be around him. But as a viewer, I love it. I get it. And I kind of, I feel like Andy was one of those too. I mean, Jeff said it himself, one of the worst starts, which I was like, oh, would hate to have that told to me, but at least by Jeff. But to see him turn around, to see him never give up, to see him find new ways to go about things, really like that. And of course, Genevieve, although her and Rachel were butting heads, they really respected each other. And that's one of my favorite things about Survivor, is watching people really respect each other and say, let's see who gets it done first. And I love that about those two women.
I just really want people to have confidence in their game. And I know it's a huge risk, But I would have loved to have seen Rachel and Jen go head to head at the end. Both of them going, you know what? I can beat Jen or I can beat Rachel. Let's do this. Let's duke it out. I know it's such a huge risk, but God, that would be a great final trouble.
I would have loved to see that as well, and would have hated to see whoever that third person was, because they probably would have like become invisible. I think to myself, like, they talked to Sue a little bit. They asked her a few questions. I'm sure, it was more. Tribal council isn't 5 minutes. We all know that. Yeah. But when I sit there and I'm like, oh my God, I would hate to have been that person, because you can tell the intensity that these other two have going on. And you have this moment where you're like, oh crap, it's not going to be me. Like, what do I do now? Jeff, threw a question over there, like, oh, the idol. But anyways, Rachel, you found an idol. And I'm like, oh no, give her some more time.
There was even that bit where Gabe, I can't remember what question it was, but someone asked a question, those who answered, Gabe was like, can I hear Sue answers, please, as well?
Exactly.
She did stuff.
Oh, poor Sue. Who do you think would have won a Jen versus Rach Final Trouble Council, Nin?
Say that again. Sorry.
Who do you think would have won in a Jen versus Rachel Final Trouble Council? Yeah.
If it was one of those two, maybe Jen, only because. Oh no! Well,
tough.
Watching it, I was more impressed by what Rachel had done with all of the advantages and relationships that she had. I feel like Genevieve really was able to use her words, which then makes me say, could it have been her, because she can argue better? She might be able to counter, because there's so many moments we see Sam say something and some people are kind of, like, faces are being made. He's making faces. Rachel's like, no, like, she's not scared to check you. And Genevieve wouldn't have been scared either. And I also think it just would have really been back and forth, to where it's like, will the jury even be able to ask questions, because these two women are just like going head to head. So I may have given it to Jen only because of the fact that she seems like a really good arguer. And if I'm not mistaken, she's a lawyer as well. So she has like that background of not backing down and knowing exactly what to say, when to say it, and who to appeal to and how to appeal to them. So maybe lean towards her just a little bit, but I'm still really happy with Rachel.
Yeah. Because I reckon with Jen, what I found really interesting is it completely fell off the rails after the Soul vote, and she's got this massive target on her. But before that, there was so many occasions where she was like, I actually don't want to do what everyone wants to do. I'm going to do what I want to do, and here's how I'm going to go about it. And I thought she was super effective, even more so than Rachel, I think, in a lot of ways, of having her plan and then going around and actually making it happen. Like, I felt like Rachel made her way through, but I feel like Genevieve's really like got momentum behind different votes and really made stuff happen.
Yeah, and I can also see after the Kishan vote, because she actually mentioned it herself, that's when she kind of cut off her emotions. And it's really hard. We've all been in those positions, but I love the fact that she was able to do it, because that's what you should do. You have to separate the two. You love these people. You have this unbreakable bond, this thing that's never going to, be experienced with somebody else. It's only those that were out there with you. So sometimes you have to cut it off. And the fact that she was able to do it and then acknowledge later on, maybe I shouldn't have, but it still got her as far as it did, so there's a lot to it, but I was really impressed when she admitted that.
I think I just want to take a moment as well to appreciate Caroline, because I do feel that Caroline was playing such a perfect new era game. I think she understood what the winners have done in the new era. I think she had her shields in place. She had her Gabes. She had people in her alliance that were going to be targeted before her. She had managed her threat level. I feel like everything was moving forward. She had other bigger targets like Rachel and Jen in the game. She had great self-awareness. She had that wonderful read on Rachel as well, where she sort of was like, Rachel's a player. And Rachel and Jen are both sort of big names, and they sort of identified each other. Game recognizes game. And it was just really, it took Operation Italy to get rid of Caroline. So I just think Caroline was playing a really, not flashy, but a good new era winning game, I felt.
I feel like she was in this position, and it felt like she was just about to make a few big moves at this big sprint to the end. And like the pieces were all kind of there, and then it just sort of was stolen away. I was quite sad to Caroline, because it was one of those things of like, she couldn't really have played around it in any real way. It's kind of like, you just kind of got done by a really incredible move. It's like,
yeah. And also to go out like that,
I know,
is kind of like, it sucks. But then to also say it took all of this, and then Rachel getting, individual immunity. So it was kind of like you were the next up. It sucks. but to think you're always going to be a part of Operation Italy, of this huge thing that happened in season 47. It's always like 50-50, right? Like, it sucks it was you, but also it took all of this work just to get me out, and I really love that.
So do I. Favorite moves? Was there any moves from the season that really stood out to you, Neen? Anything
lot.
that? Yeah. I know there were some really good ones.
Yeah, I mean, two immediately come to mind, and the first one that I actually like, oh wow, was when Rome had said out loud that he had to steal a vote to really get Soul on their side with Genevieve to get rid of Kashawn, because I was like, how is he going to convince him after the way he was acting? Because Soul, he has some composure. I'm not one to, we've all been in situations, whether they were televised or not, where you're like, this person is about to pop off, and I've had to control myself. So the fact that he was able to, with the way Rome was acting, is insane. But the fact that he did that to tell Soul, like, dude, I'm not joking, I was like, okay, that's great. And then the second one was the shot in the dark when Rachel, because that one I actually watched CBS, which is how I got the Buffs, had a viewing party at a university near me, and we watched it. People had their phone locked up and everything. They did it. Everyone in that auditorium gasped when they showed her look to see how everyone was reacting. All of us in the front, because it was a few Survivor players, and all of us looked at each other, was like, that's so smart. And, in Australian Survivor, we don't have a shot in the dark, so it's not really something that we necessarily think about. But that jaw dropped, everyone gasped, it was completely quiet, and I was like, holy crap, that's so smart.
I love that. Josh, what any moments stood out for you, mate?
I think that a big changing move one was the Annika vote with Sam, Sierra, and Andy all teaming up together. I think that was a really big one because it kind of like consistently, and I wanted to speak a bit about Andy, like consistently like doing stuff and big things and changes. And I felt like almost of everyone in the whole season, I feel like Andy was the most eager and willing to make changes and do big swap ups and make big moves. And I think Andy probably did the most this season. Like he was in everyone's ear all the time, and he was jumping, and he didn't want to stick to the plan. I think that's maybe his downfall in some ways. But like most people just wanted to stick to their plan, get their stuff through, get to the end game, whereas Andy was jumping all over the place all the time. So I think all the things that Andy was involved in, because it was sort of went off script, he was like, let's do this, guys, let's do this, and jumped around, and everyone kept being cool with it, which was really interesting. Everyone still trusted, like people who were with him were happy to be like, yeah, Andy's going to make this happen. Let's go.
Yeah. I think with that is when you're the one changing, when you're the one splitting and jumping around, you sort of know what's happening, and you take a bit more, like your understanding of the game improves at that point, because well, I'm going to affect this. But the thing, Andy was sort of Teflon in the way that no one just turned around and be like, you know what, Andy's flipping all over the place, let's just get rid of Andy. Often, like the flippers never win, they talk about, but he managed to just keep getting through. And I think maybe that was because his meltdown at the start, people just wrote him off, and they just said, you know what, this guy's not going to be a threat. And it's interesting to know as well with Nina, because sometimes people come into the game going, as fans, and I know I was feeling this as well, and you go, I just don't want to go home first, I don't want to make a mistake straight up and things like that. But once you get through that point, do you think that actually frees you up to be like, look, I nearly went home, so anything now is a bonus, and I am just going to play a bit freer? Do you think that mindset sort of impacts people that play?
Yeah, it absolutely does, because there's so many times we've all experienced and watched other people experience where they get over this hurdle or this wall that they were really nervous about. And then they're like, oh my gosh, that wasn't even that bad. Or I was able to do it. And, we all hear, oh, I got more confident in my game. I got more confident with my decisions. And I really do think that it's a great thing, depending on how you go about it. And like you already said, Josh, he didn't even go home because of him being such a flip-flopper.
Yes.
He went home because he didn't stop talking and told Rachel the wrong thing at the wrong time. And I found that really impressive, because all I could think was to myself, this guy's such a flipper, why don't you guys get rid of him? But I think what played to his game was how honest he was when he came back, and the image he already created from the beginning, which I honestly think was so intentional. Like, I think that there was sides to it that's like genuinely, and I'm telling, when I watched the first episode, I was like, and sorry, but I was like, that's an act. Then I was like, no, he's doing it for a very long time. So I was like, I think this is legit, but maybe amplified, because he always references how people look at him. He constantly references it, so he knows, and he referenced it about other people. So he's very socially aware and use that to his advantage. And I was like, that's impressive. But like you said, as a fan, once you get past that hurdle, it really opens you up. I just think you have to be a little bit more careful, because you get so excited and so many things go right for somebody like Andy that one day you forget and you let that wall drop so far down that you're, of all people to talk to, Rachel, like all I was thinking was, why her? Why are you telling her this? But, you know, a decision was made and he, you know, has to stick by it by now.
I really liked, like, obviously Operation Italy was really good, but the thing I liked most about Operation Italy was, and this could have an impact moving forward on the game as well, it was who Sam chose to go on the reward with him and to isolate. And I think that's something that we haven't seen as much. The game theory is always leave someone behind that you trust, that can sort of watch what everyone else is doing, and you've got a little bit of a spy. It's not so much let's take all my alliance away and let's just come up with a really awesome plan. And I actually thought that was pretty genius, because I haven't seen that in a long while. And to give everyone a time, because that was one of the things that surprised me with playing, was the fact that you can see people go off together. You see everyone go off and talk, and you go, something's happening there. So to remove that element and just go, you know what, we're just going to go away for 24 hours, especially in a game, American Survivor, how quick it is now, you don't get those times to just go off and just have a chat. And there may be this may be something moving forward where we go, you move away and you go, you know what, we're just going to come up with this awesome plan. Everyone's going to know their roles. We don't have to check in on each other constantly once we're back. Like Andy, they made that the point. Andy, you have to play this role. You have to pretend you're not with us. You're not going to talk to us again, and we're just going to trust that you're going to do it. So I thought that in itself was quite a good move. I think that was one of my favorites.
Which I think as a casual viewer, you don't really appreciate the time constraints around and the voting around that kind of stuff. And like, I think that heavily speaks to why Operation Italy worked, because, yeah, you're right. They didn't need to redo it. So their roles were so locked in. They knew exactly what they had to do, and they essentially just played out the whole afternoon perfectly.
Yeah, and I really appreciate it after, of course, it's a completely different situation, but when Liz chose George and I to go off on a reward challenge, all I could think was, girl, why me? But then we were able to come up with blindsiding Haley, and I didn't check in with them after that. And it's so funny because when I watched this season, I was thinking, no, leave Genevieve. She's such a good, persuade her. Why would you take her? She would be a great person to leave back at camp. But like you said, I didn't appreciate it until afterwards, where I was like, oh my God, no, that worked perfect. And of everybody to choose, Andy's the perfect person, because you know he's actually going to hear you out. We have so many players where in Australian Survivor, we have a lot more time in certain situations where you're trying to persuade this person that will not budge. So for them to choose Andy was great. Teeny would have just ended up blabbing, or they wouldn't have really got a whole lot of strategy going. Sue wouldn't have done anything. She would have just stuck with Rachel. Rachel, don't even bother, because she's gonna, her and Genevieve already. So I thought in the moment, no, don't do it. But afterwards, I was like, wow, he knew exactly what he was doing, and I give him so much praise for that.
I thought that was great as well. Anyone on the cards for possibly returning for 50 from this season, Neen?
To be honest, you always say like the winner, and she well-deserved win. Yeah. Genevieve, I think would be a really great person. I think her threat level would be through the roof because of how she played and the things that she said. And then somebody like Rome or Andy, I think would be like the backup, just because of the constant, like kind of that television personality where you're like, they're actually doing strategic things, like, so they're perfect for the game, but they're loud and boisterous about it. They don't hide. They're willing to flip and do whatever they want and can do in that moment. And I think that's something you need in every season. And you kind of want every player to be like that. So the fact that and Survivor has evidence that they are those kinds of players, I could see any one of those three getting called back.
Yeah, I think you've hit that. Anyone else, Josh, that came to? I think those guys are your number.
I was thinking with Robe, I was like, I think I've had my fill of Robe. I think I got what I wanted. I got what I wanted out of Robe, and it was kind of fun and crazy, but I don't envision him doing anything that different. Or I don't know. It would be fascinating if he came in with this a bit cooler jets and like played a bit differently. I'd love to see Andy again, because I think Andy, he had such a crazy up and down journey that then with the knowledge of having done a season where that places him, I reckon Caroline would be nice as well. But I think in terms of like early people, bring back John.
Yeah, well, everyone was hanging for John.
Give him a shot.
Yeah,
I was so sad when John went. Otherwise, Sol would probably be the other one for me. I just really liked, just as a personality, seemed to be really lovely, but still like willing to move around and sort of found his way through that Red Tribe early times. But yeah, I think it's kind of most of the cast that I would.
Yeah, I think Nina. I think for me, Jen's probably out of everyone. If they were only going to bring back one person, I think it would be Jen. But I think you're right. I think she'll have a little bit of trouble. Sort of, you get that huge threat level without actually having of one, like, which is a bit annoying because you're like, well, I didn't win. You're like, yeah, but you were really good. So I think, yeah, it could be really difficult for her moving forward.
It's really like what she said, because there's so many people that you'll watch and you'll say they're open to things. They want those relationships. You can build something with them. But when she said, I can put a wall up and separate the two, immediately I'd be like, this girl can love me 1 second and be willing to cut me the neck. You don't really want that. I want somebody, even if you can separate the game, you still have a soft spot. I mean, I've been with people where I'm like, they got to go. I get it, but I'm struggling with the decision. Yeah. So to know that she doesn't struggle,
yeah, it's scary. It's scary. Just to wrap up 47, I thought it was a good season. I really enjoyed it. I think it's probably one of my favorite new era seasons at this point, and I'm really looking forward to season 48. But we've got a few things happening in Australia. Obviously, we've heard a bit about the Australia versus the world. I just wanted to touch on that quickly, Neen. First of all, if you were on this, would you be playing for the world or would you be playing for Oz? That's what I can't wrap my head around. Where do you see yourself?
Yeah, I think if I was asked, I would want to play for Australia. You know, I got to represent. No, but in all honesty, I feel like if I got casted, I might be on the world side, just because I think there's so many great players that you would want from the Australian side where you could say, let's just stick Nina over here. So we kind of get like that double.
Best of both worlds. Yeah.
So yeah, I would have loved to have been on the Australian side, but I would definitely be okay just to be on period. So
well, it looks some of the people that they've announced, like you've got your Tonys, your Pavs, like this is huge. How do you think these sort of really big iconic players from America, how do you think they'll acclimatize to the Australian game? I know it's going to be a bit of a different beast, but just in general, how do you think they're going to approach it?
I hope they do well. I hope everyone does well, in all honesty, but I will say there's still like a culture shock. I was very surprised by like tall poppy syndrome, sportsmanlike conduct when you win something, the terminology. I'm like, everybody's talking about being pissed but going out at night, like what's happening? And they're like, no, like it's a good thing. And I'm like, that's not good. I don't want to be pissed. So there's like little things like that. And I will say, being that these players have played years before, you know, this isn't just like new era players. I mean, Parv, Sharif, far back, Tony a little, you know, halfway down, but these are very experienced players who have been on other shows, other strategic shows. So with that, I think they'll have a lot of advantages, but I also know, like the rest of us, when somebody has such a wide ranging abilities, I would say, or experiences, that can kind of cloud their judgment and what they're dealing with now. This has happened for me in this way before, but this is a whole new beast. You have to let that go and be able to move forward. So I hope they do well. As you know, at the end of the day, I am an American, but it's Australia versus the world, and I just have a soft spot, for Australian Survivor.
Yeah, it's so good. Has it ever come up, like you playing US? Obviously, you just took to the game so well in Australia. Did it ever come up in the past? Like,
actually, I auditioned for David versus Goliath, and I didn't move forward. Like, I went out there, met a doctor, and out there in California, not or anything, but like in front of producers and things like that. I never got told why. Hopefully it wasn't that I sucked, but also I was a college student, so it's like David or Goliath. Like Sandra's daughter makes her a Goliath. A college student makes her a David. Like, where do I fit? And while it sucked that I didn't get the call back, I wouldn't change anything because I got to do 2 seasons of Australian Survivor, one in Australia, one in Samoa, 2 locations that haven't been seen in a long time in the American version, and then got the opportunity to do the Anonymous because of that. And, you know, it's just so many things. And the amount of people that I'm able to meet and connect with, I wouldn't change anything. But, you know, if they called me in the future, that'd be really nice. I don't know if it would happen because we also have not seen other people. Like, they've opened up to Canadians, but no players. You know what I'm saying? So as a player, like, am I technically a returnee? I come from Survivor, the franchise, but it's the Australian, you know, network. It's a lot. And now that I've done the Anonymous with NBC, you know, what does that look like? I don't know, but I would be like, just consider me, guys. Come on, do a Survivor. I think Shannon said it, Survivor Dynasty. Like, let's have some Survivor kids out there.
I would
and you have to call me for that. I mean, look, never say never, but like, come on, guys. If they don't call me for that, honestly, I might cry a little bit.
Yeah, that's because there's quite a few. You could almost Rob and Amber. Once those girls get old enough, that's a whole tribe almost. They've
Literally.
Yeah. So I think there's some awesome opportunities there moving forward, and we would the more Nina we get on our TVs, the better in any regard.
Thank you.
You've mentioned the Anonymous. I just wanted to touch on that. Obviously. Congratulations, first of all. Amazing result. How did you find the Anonymous? Obviously, it's a little bit different to Survivor. Yeah. What were some of those differences? And was there anything that you learnt or took from Survivor that helped you in the Anonymous?
Yes. So main differences, I'm not hungry. I'm not dirty most of the time, because, you know, the anxiety still like will hinder your appetite. Then at nighttime when you actually get to lay down because you didn't go home, you're like, damn, I'm kind of hungry. But differences, obviously, being compartmentalized. There's different houses and different rooms. So like you literally said in Survivor, you see people go off, you know who's where. But if there's 6 people in this house, 6 people in that house, there's also multiple rooms. So I don't know who's actually talking to who. And then having that anonymity. So in Survivor, we get those votes and you can kind of count them out. Sometimes people can hide under the radar, but most of the time, you know who voted for who. Where for us, you don't know at all. So all I'm thinking is my friend is talking to me and they might be the person putting me at risk. So that's really different. But some things I took from Survivor: 1, keep your mouth shut. Stop talking, because I talked so much. You get on a roll, and I find that I can make some decent points trying to appeal to one person, but then the other person takes it another way. So that's something, oopsies, that I did, that I learned from, because a lot of people are like, you're so quiet. And I'm like, girl, you don't know. I'm over here like, you think I'm doing this because I'm thinking, I'm holding my mouth shut. But I learned to kind of reel that in. I learned to really think about wardrobe, so you're comfortable and you're not always worried about, even though this isn't out in the wilderness, we're still, you know, doing challenges and stuff. And the last thing I want to think about is how tight my pants are and I can't breathe. Or my shoes are uncomfortable. And then just the aspect of not being scared to interrupt or join conversations and double checking. A lot of times in Survivor, I would get really nervous to say something like, Josh, Eden said this, because Josh is going to run back to Eden. This time around, there was at least 3 different situations where I was like, I'm going to check you because that don't sound right. I go straight to that person. They didn't say that. I found something out. And then 2 different situations, I kind of started a little bit of drama because somebody was talking junk. And I was like, just so you know, they're talking about you. And then I just walked by and like, but I never got told on. I don't know how I necessarily did that part of it. No one ever said, Nina told me this. And I think the only thing that makes sense to me, because they were like, I just never said it when I asked them. I always said, I'm going out on a limb here, so don't screw me. Because I'm giving you some information that you don't know that other people do. And I think that's what helped me. And that's something I learned in Survivor, is a lot of times when you're the one to go out on the limb and put yourself out there, depending on who it is, because you got to think about who you're talking to, they won't snitch on you because they want you to come back and give them some more.
Yeah, I think that's like just you saying that then, it just really cleared up in my mind, because I had that exact feeling out there. And I know other people did as well when I played, that worry that if I just try and pull this person in, Ree's going to go tell Kirby's going to tell Ferris, and everything's going to fall apart. So I'm just going to not sort of hope that they vote where I think they're going to vote, and not push that too much. But it's interesting when you're putting yourself out there and saying, look, you've got to have the social capital to be able to do that in the first place. Yeah. But being able to just say, look, I'm being vulnerable here. I'm doing something now. I'm going to help you out. You can help me out. And I think that's a bit more powerful than you think, because you're so worried about information getting out to the wrong people and it coming back and biting you in the ass. That's really interesting.
And just making sure you're saying that. That's something I learned. Don't assume that they know you're going out on a limb. Like, actually tell them. Don't. And I said to this one girl, I was like, I don't have stupid on my forehead, do I? Because if I find out whatever, she was like, no, I swear. And she didn't say anything. So actually making the statement out loud. I'm going out on a limb. I'm telling you this, and no one else is. Like, don't forget. Because if you say, they're like, oh, she's lying. No, other people know, just in case you didn't realize. So just making sure you tell them that.
Is there any other Survivor players you'd like to see on the Anonymous?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I honestly would love to see one. I would love to see my mom, because I think she'd just be chaotic, and I think it'd be really funny. From the American side, I mean, just because we're talking about 47 players like Genevieve and Rachel, because of how analytical they are. I've seen like Xavier, who was on the Anonymous from Big Brother. He was very analytical, and unfortunately got a big target on his back. But I would love to see how they would be able to maneuver in that, because they've been so successful on 47. I think that would be really interesting.
Yeah. Josh, any other questions for Nina before we start wrapping this bad boy up?
No, I think it's been a lovely discussion. I really enjoyed this season. After having not watched for quite a number of years, it was kind of cool to come back. And I'll be like, what's everyone talking about? Survivor's still great.
Yeah.
Nina, what's next for you? What's on the cards? What are you up to?
Right now, nothing but living life. If I'm lucky, the Traders would be amazing, because the Anonymous, the same production company. I'm like, y'all know what y'all getting now, so hit me up. And then if not, any Survivor, honestly, I would hope that I would get one more chance. A lot of people only get to play once. I was blessed enough to play twice because I fractured my ankle, but I'll still take it. So if there was ever a third time out there, that would be absolutely amazing. And I would love to have that opportunity.
Well, look forward to it, Nina. Thank you so much for spending time. I know it's just before Christmas and there's a lot happening, so I really appreciate you coming on for this special bonus podcast of a Survivor Debrief. Thank you very much. Have a lovely Christmas. Everyone else, please like and subscribe. Let everyone know about us, and we'll see you in 2025. Josh, thank you very much. Great to have you. See you later. Nina, love your work. Bye.